Al, powered coaching, you know what that really means. It means you're about to step into a conversation with the most powerful force you already have inside you, your own mind, your own standards, your own ability to break patterns and create a life on your terms. And I want you to hear me right now, because if you're here listening, something inside you is already waking up. Something in you is saying, enough. I'm ready for more. I'm done settling. I'm done shrinking. It's time. I've spent my entire life helping people break through, and I can tell you this with absolute certainty. Transformation doesn't happen when life gets easier. It happens when you get stronger. And this is the moment where strength begins. Because the truth is, most people wait. They wait for clarity. They wait for permission. They wait for confidence. They wait for the perfect plan, the perfect timing, the perfect version of themselves. And while they wait, life moves, time moves. Potential disappears into the background, but you're not here to wait. You're here because you feel something shifting. You sense that there's a higher version of you, a version that's sharper, more focused, more disciplined, more alive, and you're tired of brushing past that version every time fear or doubt whispers in your ear. Let me tell you something, you don't need a perfect plan to change your life. You need a moment, one moment where you decide that the person you're becoming matters more than the excuses you've been living with. One moment where your standards rise so high that your old habits can't survive in that space anymore. And this AI-powered coaching experience, it's not here to replace your power. It's here to amplify it, to mirror back the truth you've been avoiding, to challenge the stories you tell yourself, to give you a space where you can't lie, can't hide, can't pretend you're smaller than you are. When technology meets human hunger, real hunger, something unstoppable is created. But none of this matters unless you're willing to step into the arena, unless you're ready to confront the patterns that have shaped you, the hesitations, the fears, the beliefs that were never yours to begin with. You've been conditioned by your past, but your past is not your destiny unless you choose to drag it with you. So let me ask you something, and I want you to answer honestly. What are you done tolerating? What emotional state, what story, what behavior have you allowed to run your life for far too long? Because the moment you decide you're done, that's the moment your life begins to shift. There is a power inside you that you haven't even come close to using. You've had glimpses of it, moments where you were bold, moments where you took charge, moments where you surprised even yourself. But glimpses aren't enough anymore. We're here to turn glimpses into your new normal. I want you to feel this. You are not broken. You are not behind. You are not late. You are simply underactivated, undercommitted to your greatness, overcommitted to your limitations. But that changes today. Because right now, in this moment, you get to make a decision, not a wish, not a hope, not a someday, a decision that says, I am stepping into my life. I am taking control. I am done being a spectator. I am done dimming my own fire. I am done apologizing for wanting more. You have no idea how powerful you become once you stop negotiating with your fears. You have no idea what's possible once you stop asking for permission to grow. You have no idea how quickly life can change when you shift from I want to I will. This is your moment, your reset, your activation. Let's build the version of you that you've always felt but haven't lived yet. Because the world doesn't need another person hiding their potential. It needs you fully awake, fully alive, fully unleashed. The moment you raise your standards, your entire life begins to shift, because standards are the invisible boundaries that shape everything you think, feel, and do. People often believe their lives change because of circumstances, luck, or sudden opportunities. But the truth is far simpler and far more powerful. Your life changes the second you refuse to settle for what you once tolerated. When you raise your standards, you are telling your mind, your emotions, and your environment that the old version of you is no longer acceptable. You create a new internal blueprint, a new expectation, a new level of identity that forces everything around you to reorganize itself. And this is what most people never understand. Standards aren't goals. Goals exist outside of you. Standards live inside you. Goals are things you want. Standards are things you must become. A goal is something you hope to achieve one day. A standard is a line you refuse to cross ever again. When you make that shift internally, uncomfortable as it may be, you begin to see how quickly the external world responds. The relationships that drain you become intolerable. The habits that sabotage you become impossible to continue. The excuses you've repeated for years start to sound empty. The old identity that used to feel familiar starts breaking apart because it can't survive in the new environment you've created within yourself. Rising your standards is you stepping into a conversation with your future instead of repeating a dialogue with your past. It's you declaring, not quietly but intensely, that who you were is not who you are willing to be anymore. And the moment that declaration becomes real, not just words, not just inspiration, but a decision, everything begins to shift. Your physiology changes. Your focus sharpens. Your emotional state lifts into something stronger. You start paying attention to things you overlooked before. You begin to notice opportunities you used to miss because your mind is no longer filtering the world through the lens of limitation. It's filtering through the lens of what's now required. And requirement is powerful. Requirement pulls you forward in a way wishing never can. When something becomes a must instead of a maybe, you tap into a level of drive, creativity, and commitment that was dormant inside you. You begin solving problems that once overwhelmed you. You start taking actions you used to delay. You make decisions with clarity instead of hesitation. You stop asking, can I? And begin asking, how will I? You stop playing small because small can't live in a space where your standards have risen. And people around you feel it. They sense the shift. They notice the difference in your tone, your posture, your certainty. Some will be inspired. Some will be intimidated. Some will drift away because your new standards expose their old comfort zones. But this is part of the shift. When you elevate yourself, everything that isn't meant to align with that elevation naturally falls away. Raising your standards is you choosing identity over convenience. It's you prioritizing who you want to become over who you've been forced to be. It's the moment you stop negotiating with your limitations and start demanding more from yourself than the world ever has. Not in a harsh way, but in a powerful way. A way that says, I'm ready to stop living below my potential. Because deep down, you already know you're capable of more. You've felt the pull. You've had moments of clarity, flashes of energy, bursts of confidence where you saw glimpses of the person you could be if you stopped settling for less. Those moments weren't accidents. They were signals. They were reminders. They were invitations. And raising your standards is accepting that invitation. It's stepping into a higher level of self-respect, self-belief, and self-command. It's recognizing that your standards determine the quality of your decisions, the consistency of your actions, and the direction of your future. When your standards rise, so does your state. When your state rises, so does your behavior. When your behavior rises, so does the life you create around you. And before long, the world you used to dream about starts to look like the world you're actually living in. Your transformation starts the second you stop negotiating with your fears, because fear is the quiet salesman of limitation. It convinces you to shrink a little, delay a little, doubt a little, until those small negotiations become a lifestyle that steals your potential piece by piece. Most people don't even realize they're negotiating with fear because it rarely shows up as a scream. It shows up as a whisper. A whisper that says, not yet, you're not ready. What if you fail? What will they think? And every time you say yes to that whisper, you hand over a little more of your power. The negotiation becomes automatic. You don't even question it anymore. It becomes normal to play small, normal to hold back, normal to stay in patterns that feel safe but suffocating. But the moment you stop making those deals, the moment you interrupt that internal dialogue, something inside you wakes up. You reclaim energy you didn't know you were losing. You regain clarity you forgot you had. You reconnect with parts of yourself that have been buried under doubt and hesitation. This is why transformation doesn't begin with a perfect plan. It begins with a psychological shift, a moment where you say, I'm done giving fear authority over my decisions. That single shift changes everything, because fear doesn't disappear when you stop negotiating with it, but it loses its power to dictate your direction. You start moving even while fear is present. You start acting in spite of what you feel. You start making decisions based on vision instead of protection. And when that happens, you discover a version of yourself that fear has been hiding from you. A braver you, a more certain you, a more resilient you. Not because the challenges are smaller, but because you are no longer shrinking to fit them. When you stop negotiating with fear, your mind starts scanning for possibilities instead of threats. You begin to notice openings where you previously saw obstacles. You begin to feel momentum where you once felt paralysis. You begin to create opportunities instead of waiting for them. And every step you take reinforces a new identity, an identity that says, I move forward. I take action. I trust myself. Fear lives in the gap between who you are and who you could be. And the longer you negotiate with it, the wider that gap becomes. But the moment you stop, the gap begins to close. You reconnect with your intuition, your instincts, your hunger. You feel the spark of your potential again, not as a fantasy, but as something real, tangible, within reach. And here's the powerful part. When you stop negotiating with fear, you stop negotiating with your excuses too. The excuses that once felt logical begin to collapse under the weight of your new standard. The old stories you used to tell yourself no longer make sense. You start calling yourself out in ways you never did before. Not because you're being hard on yourself, but because you can finally see through the illusion. Fear is a master storyteller. It creates narratives that feel true, but are built on assumptions, memories, and imagined outcomes. When you stop accepting those narratives, you stop living a life based on things that haven't even happened. You start living based on who you choose to be. And with every choice, you reinforce the identity of someone who acts with courage rather than hesitation. You begin to experience yourself differently. You begin to trust your own voice. You begin to access levels of strength, determination, and creativity that only reveal themselves once fear is no longer in charge. People often think transformation requires massive changes on the outside, but the real shift is always internal. It's the moment you stop running, stop hiding, stop negotiating, and decide to stand in your own power. That decision ripples into your behavior, your habits, your relationships, the way you show up in every area of your life. And bit by bit, fear turns from a ruler into a signal, from an obstacle into a compass, from something that stops you into something that guides you toward the exact places where your growth is waiting.